Hey everyone, this is Professor Benjamin, and at the end of each week I usually send out a roundup, either it's verbal or written, and I use this tool Screencast-O-Matic to make these roundups. So they're posted to a YouTube site, and then you can look up the information that I give you in the roundup. And the purpose of the roundups is to go through some kind of just classroom rules type thing. The second thing is to give you information about the last module that we covered and the modules that we have coming up. This is a 10-week course, and I want to stress that this is an intense course. Because it's 10 weeks, it's condensed, meaning that we don't cover 4 less weeks of the semester. We cover 15 weeks in 10 weeks. So that means that there'll be sessions where we cover 2 sessions per week in order to catch up with what a traditional 15-week class is. So we went through last week, and last week you covered the introduction, and it was just a post to get to know your writing styles and to find out a little bit about you. I gave full feedback to everybody on their posts. A lot of you didn't read the directions for initial post or response post, which can be found right here under this course information session. Directions for initial post, directions for response posts, and how to use in-text citations. So a lot of you failed to meet the requirements. Now, this week we had a little bit of a different format because the class started on a Tuesday. So in the next coming weeks, the schedule will change a little bit, and that's just because the class started on a Tuesday instead of a Monday. So don't forget, by Sunday 11:59 you have your quiz due. The quizzes relate to the chapter reading. So the chapter reading, if there's a chapter that's associated with that session, then you'll have a quiz on that session. So focus on the chapter readings when you take the quiz. They're not so much on the additional readings. The additional readings and the textbook help you answer the discussion post questions. The quizzes come from the chapter readings. You don't get a lot of time to take the quizzes, so it's absolutely essential that you read the chapter before. Do some sticky note action to find out where information is so you can easily flip to those pages when you take the quiz. This week coming up, we're going to cover 2 sessions. So we're going to cover session 2, Tragedy of the Commons, and we're going to cover session 3. So this week by Tuesday, 11:59, you have due a forum post for Tragedy of the Commons. You pick one of the 6 questions that's answered. Now remember, there's 36 students in this class. I give 6 questions because I don't want everyone answering the same question. So the first 6 people who answer each question, that question then becomes out of play. So it's essential that you get into the modules early and answer the questions that you think you would like to answer. If you're the 7th, 8th, or 9th person to answer the same question, then you will not receive credit. Now a lot of students say, oh, well, I was preparing my answer at 11:50 and someone else posted it. Well, that's sorry. Then get in earlier and post your answer. We've already had a student who's posted something for Tragedy of the Commons because they saw a question they wanted to answer and they answered it already. So get in earlier before the deadlines and answer the questions that you want to answer, and then as it gets closer to the deadline, make sure you pick a question that not so many people have answered. So this week you'll have an initial post due by Tuesday 11:59, a response post to your fellow classmate due by Thursday 11:59 for Tragedy of the Commons. You can respond to any question. The initial question, only 6 people can answer that, but you can, we could have 5 people or 7 people who respond to the same question. That's okay. It's just the initial post, I don't want more than 6 people answering each question. So initial post due by Tuesday, response post due by Thursday for Tragedy of the Commons, initial post due by Tuesday, response post due by Thursday for economics and policy, and you have an economics and policy quiz due by next Sunday, October 14th, 11:59. And this deals with the chapter, this PowerPoint that's associated with this chapter. Okay, remember, if you open up the PowerPoint, in actual PowerPoint, at the bottom there are notes on each slide as well, which is a helpful tool. So this week we're going to cover Tragedy of the Commons. This article is absolutely essential, and a lot of you will try and forego this article because it's long. It's 15 pages in length, so you're going to try to avoid it. But it's going to come back on the midterm exam, and it's absolutely essential reading because all Tragedy of the Commons fall under this. A Tragedy of the Commons is the fact that there's shared spaces throughout the world. This is air, land, water, etc. And we tend to look, we have an inherent need for greed. So we tend to look for our short-term gain, which is we use the commons, we exploit them, rather than thinking about the long-term interest, which is, well, if we pollute the air now, then there's not going to be any air for us to breathe in the future. Okay? Commons can be really large, they can be really small. This article by Garrett Hardin rebutes an article in the 1800s written by William Foster Lloyd, and this is talked about in the PowerPoint. This article gives all the technical solutions that have been proposed for the tragedy of the commons, and he explains why they don't always work. And Garrett Hardin's real belief is that technical solutions don't work, that we need an extension in morality, that each technical solution needs also an extension in morality. And that could be an education piece or a morality piece, but we can't solve the commons problems by technical solutions. We can make advancements and we can reduce pollution and we can reduce water use and all that, but we won't solve the problem unless people understand why they're exploiting the commons. So this relates to all tragedy of the commons, all exploitations of the commons. One specific example of this is invasive species. And not all invasive species are tragedy of the commons, only when they're brought in for human gain are they considered a tragedy of the commons. So when we bring in a species because we think it's a pretty flower, or the spotted lantern fly that's going on now, right? The spotted lantern moth, which is a big problem right now, especially out in Pennsylvania, right outside Philadelphia, and we bring in species for short-term gain, and then what happens is that they overtake the entire ecosystem because we don't think about the long-term interest. So that is why an invasive species is considered a tragedy of the commons. Remember, if it's brought in by another species, then it's not a tragedy of the commons. It's a tragedy of the commons when it's brought in for a short-term gain. Okay? So that's Session 2. Session 3, we're going to cover economics, ethics, and policy. This article, Pricing the Priceless, is a great article. You're going to see the question in the future, can we put a price tag on nature? We sure as heck can. We do that through CBAs, which is cost-benefit analysis. We do it through hedonic valuation, ecological valuation, economic valuation. We do it through all these tools. Economic, ecological, hedonic valuation are talked about in your textbook. Cost-benefit analysis is here. One solution that people say would be able to take the place of a cost-benefit analysis and put an economic spin on the environment would be cap and trade. Now, there's people on both sides of the aisle on cap and trade. This video gives you a lot of the negatives about cap and trade. This article gives you positives about cap and trade. And so there's environmentalists on both sides of the article talking about whether cap and trade works or not. Okay? Cap and trade is when we put a cap on pollution and then the credits, you can give your credits, like if you reduce your pollution and let's say your cap is 100 and you reduce your pollution to 90 tons a year, you can sell those 10 tons to people who can't meet their emission standards. And you can sell them on a stock market, like a trading system. And so there's a lot of people who say, well, we're just trading pollution, we're not cutting back on pollution. There's just lots of lots of problems with it, but there's also solutions to it. Environmental injustice is also talked about in the session. You'll see in your book, ecofeminism is discussed, as well as environmental injustice, that a lot of times it deals with race, but now we see it deals with gender, economic, a lot of times lack of education, lack of income, and these are examples of that. Okay, so you want to tie these in. You'll see questions in the forums that require more than one article to be used, or your textbook in conjunction with the article. Everything kind of feeds off of each other, so don't write your posts in isolation. Make sure you use all the tools that you have available to have a well-developed mini type paper when you submit your initial post each week. Same here. You're going to see questions where it talks about privatization of national parks, or it talks about privatization of commons dealing with this article. Well, you also want to bring in this Gulf oil spill article. You also want to bring in tragedy of the commons, because Hardin talks about privatization and whether it would work or not. Okay, one of the big things is if we privatize commons, are they really commons anymore? Or because commons are supposed to be shared, and once we take away that and private companies own the commons, are they really commons anymore? So that's a question that you want to ask yourself as you go through this. All right, so just a couple things. Number one, if you haven't had time, please go back and read the syllabus, watch the video on the homepage, read all the directions under the course information session. This week we cover 2 sessions because we're trying to catch up on lost time. So you're going to have an initial post due for session 2 by Tuesday, 11:59, and a response post by Thursday, 11:59. You'll see the due date says Thursday, but don't forget the component that you need to make the initial post by Tuesday, 11:59. And the reason I do that is because if not, if I wait till Thursday, everyone waits till the last minute, and then people who want to get in early and get their work done they just don't have anyone to respond to. So this sets up that kind of block scheduling. The same schedule exists for the rest of the semester, so get into the routine. So initial post due by Tuesday, response post due by Friday. Right here again, initial post due by Tuesday, response post due by next Thursday. Sorry, response post due by Thursday. I said Friday. Initial post due by Tuesday, response post due by Thursday. Initial post due by Tuesday, response post by Thursday. This quiz is due by next Sunday. And don't forget your introduction quiz, which is also due by this Sunday, 11:59. And remember, the quizzes deal with the chapter readings, not the additional articles. If you have questions, make sure you reach out to me. I'm available all the time, so just email me through Canvas, and I can answer your questions for you. Have a fantastic week, and I really look forward to your thoughtful posts that are due by Tuesday, 11:59, for both Session 2 and Session 3. Have a fantastic week.